I would say niche down as far as you have to niche in order for you to be incredibly effective with your client work. After that, niche down as far as you have to be incredibly effective with your marketing, but not beyond.
Get ready to build, protect, and sell your expertise online with the Online Genius Podcast. You'll laugh. We hope you won't cry. But you'll always be informed and prepared so you can have the success you want. Here's your host, Bobby Klink.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm really excited for today's show because we're going to be talking about something that I know I struggled with for a long time, and I know that a lot of other entrepreneurs struggle with as well. That's generating leads to build your business. And today we are joined by Tom Poland. His area of expertise is generating a weekly flow of highly qualified inbound new client inquiries. And his real focus is on helping coaches, advisors, consultants, other people like that who are selling a service to do just that. Now, Tom started his first business at age 24 and has gone on to start and sell for others, taking 2 of them international. In that time, he's managed teams of over 100 people and annual revenue of more than 20 million. He's the best-selling author of LEADSOLOGY, The Science of Being in Demand, which I got a copy of. And let me just tell you, listeners, you need to grab a copy of that book. It is fantastic. Now, he's also shared international speaking platforms with the likes of Michael Gerber of E-Myth fame, Richard Koch of the 80-20 Principle, and Brian Tracy, and many others. Welcome to the Online Genius Podcast, Tom.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks, Bobby.
Now, I'm excited to talk about generating leads because, who wouldn't want to talk about that? That's kind of the bread and butter of our business. But before I do that, I always like to start these interviews and ask my guests a little bit about themselves. And in preparing for this interview, you told me that you once did a silent meditation retreat for 10 days. I have to ask, does that mean you literally didn't talk for 10 days?
Almost. There were 2 occasions over the 10-day period where we got a half-hour session with the Buddhist monk who was leading the meditation retreat. So for those 2 half-hour periods, we could ask him questions and have a conversation with him, which if you've been silent for a few days, it actually feels like kind of weird. It's such a strange experience. But yeah, other than that, it was silent for 10 days. And in fact, we weren't allowed, we weren't allowed. There was no security strip searching us, but it was recommended that we don't take a pad or a pencil, that we don't take any cell phones in. It was to be a mental isolation experience.
Wow, that seems amazing. Did something great come out of that for you, I hope?
Well, it was extraordinary how much my mind slowed down. And the other thing was everything got in perspective. So the things that were really annoying me before, common garden variety challenges, they had all but disappeared from my mind. So where the real opportunities and challenges were in life that were worthy of focus and effort, they came into sharp focus. Now, the problem, though, for me, is that I can't do a 10-day silent meditation retreat, like twice a month. So, the big challenge was, Zen says, what's Zen about? It's about chop wood, carry water. To integrate not the same depth of clarity, but progressively integrate increasing clarity in my mind as I'm, paying the bills and driving the freeway.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge. And I try to meditate. I can't claim to be wonderful at it and to be consistent as I should be, but the idea of that kind of isolation for 10 days sounds pretty amazing and pretty challenging. So I'm sure you got a lot from it.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience.
Well, now I do want to move, though, to why I brought you on, and that's to talk about getting leads. And I have to admit, look, when I read your book, I loved it. And I loved it for a lot of reasons, but probably because when I started at the beginning, it struck a chord. You tell a story of this kind of fictional person named Sam, who's basically a brilliant technician, so brilliant at what he does, but horrible at marketing. And that struck a chord with me because that's exactly where I was when I started my law firm. I was a brilliant lawyer, but I had no idea how to market. You would laugh at me, Tom. my idea of marketing was to talk to other lawyers, send a newsletter to other lawyers, and maybe go to networking events with other lawyers. That was about it. And so I'm wondering, how common is it in your experience that people, that coaches, consultants, advisors are, brilliant at providing the service, but just horrible at marketing?
Well, it's ubiquitous. It's universal. It's everywhere. And why wouldn't it be? Because at no point during law school did you have any in-depth training on how to get new clients on board. It's the same if people do an MBA. Yes, they'll talk about marketing in broad terms and possibly about corporate branding and so on. But there's really no get into the weeds, step 1, step 2, step 3. That's going to be like, if you would, pulling a lever or pushing a button and then having this conveyor belt of new client inquiries coming in. That sort of training just doesn't exist when we're getting our degrees or learning our profession.
And is there also is there a bit of a mindset issue or lack of focus that feeds into this as well? I mean, I tend to find that a lot of the challenges we face as entrepreneurs, there tends to be some kind of mental shift that people need to make along the way.
Oh, without question. I think the mental shift that people need to make with marketing is best summed up by Mark Twain's quote, he said, it's not the things that we don't know that hurt us. It's the things we think we know that just ain't so. And people have all sorts of ideas in their minds because they're bombarded with these ideas. I'm not saying that people are stupid. I'm just saying that their faculties are bombarded with these things that you should do for marketing. Go to business networking meetings, set up a trade show, maybe run some ads on Facebook. And as soon as we think that those things are so, then they're the things that we run around and do, but unfortunately, they're not the things that are actually going to work.
It's funny when you say that, because I can't help but think to when I started my law firm and I figured out that what I was doing wasn't working. What I started to do is I said, hey, let me read all these books. But the problem was I was reading books about marketing for lawyers, which was a silly thing to do. It was only when I said, you know what, let me throw away these books that are meant for lawyers and read some good marketing books that I started to learn things.
Right. That's funny.
So let me talk then briefly about, in your book, I also love, you lay out like 16 major mistakes that people make. And I'm not going to go through all of those because there's too many, but there were some that really struck a chord for me. And I think one of them you were hinting at in your last answer, and that's the first mistake you lay out, and that's putting tactics before strategy. Can you explain what you mean by that and how that hurts a coach or an advisor?
Absolutely. So the sequence looks something like this. Someone gets stressed about not having enough clients or not having any certainty or predictability around the flow of clients. And that stress sponsors or stimulates what I call random acts of marketing. So people wake up, someone wakes up one morning, thinks, oh my goodness, I don't have enough clients coming in. How am I going to pay the bills, support the family? I got to do some marketing. And they do the quickest and easiest, generally the most convenient things to do, which is to go to networking meetings, book a trade show, book some advertisements or whatever it happens to be. So those random acts of marketing don't work for a couple of reasons, but chief amongst which is the strategic work has not been done. For example, what is it that your ideal client needs to see or to read so that your message gets cut through, gets noticed amongst the avalanche of other messages out there? And so therefore it needs to be differentiated. But not only does it need to be differentiated, what is it they need to see or hear in order for them to take the action you want them to take? Now, if the answer to that question of what do they need to see or hear has not been well proven, then we're just going and we're just sticking any old bait on the fishing line and hoping to heck there's some fish in that pond that like that particular bait. So people go to business networking meetings and thrust their business card and say, hey, I'm a lawyer. Should we talk about doing business? Or at the very least, hope that someone will ask them about doing business. And none of the strategic work has been done. So we haven't figured out what is it they need to hear or see in order for us to get cut through and for them to want to take action. That hasn't been done. We haven't listed a powerful stack of reasons as to why you should logically be that ideal client's number one choice. And I beat my clients up on this. You've got to have 8 highly differentiated reasons which can be justified because they're solid and you can prove them, not motherhood statements like, we care about you or we're great at customer service, but specific proven differentiators that communicate to the client clearly and rationally that you are more differentiated and more desirable than your competitors. These are some of the strategic things that need to be figured out even before the first step is taken towards actually doing the marketing.
I love the way you described at the beginning of that answer that you need to know what your ideal client needs to see and hear from you before you start doing anything. And I know, Tom, I was not good at that. For a long time, I struggled. And as I've made a transition into working with online entrepreneurs, I'll admit I launched a course to crickets because I didn't do that. I always skipped over that part of understand what your ICA wants to hear. So is that something you find that most people skip over? And how can they actually stop skipping over that and fix that piece?
First of all, yes, most people skip it over it because they, let's be fair, they're trained as a consultant or a business coach or a lawyer or a CPA or whatever, an architect or whatever. So they don't have the training to do it. So they don't even understand that they're skipping over it. They just think they need to get out there in the marketplace and talk to people. So I think that's the first part. The other thing that my answer presumes is that people know who their ideal client is. And part of the strategy is to figure out who you're going to market to and who you're not going to market to. So marketing is a very exclusive thing. It's not an inclusive thing. The moment we exclude a lot of possibilities in the marketplace in order to be able to focus on the very specific needs of individual segments of the market. Having said that, I forgot the second half of your question, so would you be kind enough to remind me?
Yeah, I think I was asking about how you can fix that problem if you haven't done it. And
yes.
But actually, I think your answer led me to, a perfect way to do this, because one of the other mistakes you talked about, which I think fits in with this inclusive versus exclusive, is people fail to niche down far enough. And I've always, it's an ongoing process, but I've come to the realization that once you think you've niched down far enough, you probably need to go at least 2 or 3 more levels down. Is that about right in your estimation as well?
Look, I think in principle it definitely is. When I talk about niches, I think there's 3 ways you can slice and dice this. One is a geographical niche. You can start in your own hometown, your own town, your own city. Another one is in a market segment niche. So we could start with lawyers or we could start with architects, etc. But the third niche is the service you offer. So let's say, for example, I said, my niche is going to be the whole English-speaking world. I am going to target anyone who has their own business, and I'm going to show them the A to Z of how to start, grow, and build a terrific business. That ain't niching. So yes, from there, we need to go down at least 3 levels. But we don't have to necessarily go down to just one industry segment. For example, I happily serve English-speaking professionals who are marketing their service advice or software around the world, and I can do that. That's a pretty big niche,
right? But
I don't work with. And so you niche down as far as you need to niche down in order to get into the weeds of a particular set of needs, into the weeds of the needs. So I don't need to niche down any further, but I won't work with retailers or manufacturers or multi-level marketers or anyone who has a physical product. Because as soon as I go from helping people to market the invisible service advice software to the physical, then the potency of what I can teach people diminishes very significantly. So I would say niche down as far as you have to niche in order for you to be incredibly effective with your client work. After that, niche down as far as you have to be incredibly effective with your marketing, but not beyond.
I think that's great advice. And my story is when I first started making the transition in my thinking, I said, well, I'm going to be a lawyer who serves entrepreneurs, but there are tens or 20s of millions of people who call themselves entrepreneurs, and they have different needs. So then I said, okay, online entrepreneurs. But even then, I didn't niche far enough, and I was thinking physical products, service industry. And it was only when I started saying, no, essentially I work with people very much like you do. I work with people who sell their services or information products. So it's not a real physical product. And that was when I finally was able to, I think, find a message that struck a chord. So is that the point where you can stop?
That is exactly. Because you can help people in terms of client work or value delivery. But B, that was the second point I made, is you have to niche down to the point where your marketing becomes very effective. And you've found that point. And let's face it, you know that old saying, the smaller the niche, the bigger the market.
Mm-hmm.
You've still got a massive market there.
Yep.
But in having the courage to say no and excluding a large portion of the market, you could probably help to a lesser extent. You've increased the size of your market because the market you do have, whilst it might appear to be smaller, is still massive, and you're able to serve it with great effectiveness.
Right. And so now when I offer a template form, I can say, look, this really is set for you, not for everyone else. But, you know, another one of the mistakes that you talk about, which I love, and I've come to truly understand, I've heard it forever, but I've finally come to understand it probably within the last 2 to 3 months, is a failure to establish the know, like, and trust factor. Can you talk about that for a little bit and why that's a problem and what a coach needs to do to address that?
It's one of the big failures. In fact, we talked about tactics before strategy. This is a really, really big one. And I call it Hugh Jackman marketing. You know, Hugh Jackman, he can sing, he can dance. He's got a body Adonis would die for. He can act. Yeah. He earns like $1 million a week. And I said to my wife, who's the world's most irresistible man? And she thought for a while and she said, oh, I know, it's Hugh Jackman. And I said, well, yeah, of course. Man, I said, well, tell me this. If there was a knock at the front door and you answered it and it was Hugh Jackman, he dropped to one knee and he held up a small red velvet box and opened it. It was $1 million diamond ring. And he said to you, that's my wife's name. You don't know me, but my name's Hugh Jackman. Would you marry me and make me the happiest man on earth? I said to my wife, what would you say? And she looked at me and she said, well, Tom, you know I love you, right? And I thought, yeah, I know where this is going too. And she said, look, you probably wouldn't see me again. I'm sorry, but, you know, it's Hugh Jackman. And I said, look, you don't need to apologize. If I'd answered the door and he'd proposed to me, I probably would have gone as well, and I'm not even gay. But most people are practicing Hugh Jackman marketing. They are proposing at first sight, and they haven't taken an opportunity to establish. Actually, it even goes beyond no like and trust. No one like is basically rapport. You know, we click, we get on well together. I think I could work with this person. Mm-hmm. But then respect for your professional integrity and the effectiveness of the work you do. Then it's relatability. Gosh, this lawyer, whoever it is, knows my problems, and they know what I've tried, and they know why it doesn't work. And then finally, reciprocity. This person's been so good in sharing information and valuable and engaging content with me that I would rather work with them than anyone else. So when you have a system that asks a prospect to go through an experience, such as a meeting with you, whether that's a group meeting or a one-on-one meeting, or they're reading your book, or they're showing up to a replay webinar, or they're doing something, we are able to lead someone through a pathway from being open-mindedly skeptical to a believer that you are probably one of their very best service options, if not their only valid option. That pathway is called rapport, respect, relatability, and reciprocity. So what we do is we put a big step in between the identification of the ideal client and the consult and buying what you've got or speaking to you about working with you as a client. And that big step is what I call a persuasion sequence that leads people through the rapport, the respect, the relatability, and reciprocity.
Yeah, I think that the reciprocity, I want to go down on that one a little bit, or talk about that one a little bit, because I get a question, or I see a question all the time from people in the online space. They're always worried they're giving too much away.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, where do I draw the line between giving information and start charging? And in my experience, and especially this has been my experience over the last, say, 5 months, the more you give, the more you're going to get in return because you build the reciprocity. Is that what you're talking about there?
Yeah, indeed it is. And a bit like you, Bobby, I've pushed the envelope on giving away. And at times, personally, I've been concerned, am I giving away too much? I think I'm getting closer to the right balance. So what I do is this, is if I'm running a webinar or a training session or speaking at a conference, I say to folks, look, I've got an hour with you and I'm going to show you everything I possibly can in that hour. And I'm going to answer your questions as directly and as in-depth as possible. I am not going to hold back. This will not be one of those sessions where I show you what to do, but then I laugh to myself and think, suckers, because you need me to show you how to do it. But here's the reality. People like honesty and they like truth and they like directness. The reality is this. You won't be able to implement this successfully on your own. It would be like me watching Roger Federer play tennis for an hour and then thinking I could go on the pro circuit. That's going to end in tears. But I will show you the model. I'll show you how we generate a weekly flow of leads and why it works, and I'll ask you questions. Do we have a deal? So let's speak to the elephant in the room. I'm going to give you very, very valuable information. But for goodness sakes, don't try and implement on your own because it'll end in tears. If we are okay with that, then you're in the right room, you're in the right place, and let's get cracking. So I speak to the elephant in the room right up front and be very direct and honest with people. And very occasionally I get a very clever question that if I answered it would reveal too much about my intellectual property. And I say to folks, look, normally I'd be happy to answer that question, but the problem is the answer is actually very valuable and you would have to pay for it. And people laugh and they go, yeah, okay, fair enough. And I say, the other thing is I can give you that answer. And the problem is I would be doing you a grave disservice because you would think you could go away and implement. And there's actually 37 steps to that one concept. And if you get, let's say, 3 of those steps wrong, it's like trying to get into a combination safe and you just don't have 2 out of the 10 numbers. It's not going to open.
Yeah. And I feel kind of bad advising or, pushing back on people on this, partly because where I am and in my profession, there is a very clean break. I mean, my value is often in providing template forms if people want to buy a do-it-yourself option, which, you're not going to give away. People are going to have to pay for that. And so it's very easy for me to say before that, and I can talk about all day about, well, here's what you need to include in the form. But many people are simply going to say, okay, I just want to buy the form from you. And same thing when they need service. So I feel bad, but I think it's a point worth making.
Well, I think also the thing is if you give away things that you say to people, look, you can go and implement on your own here, it's all for free. Guess what? They don't do it.
Yeah, they don't.
I've had friends, I've invited my friend and on multiple occasions, and I'm still doing it, and I don't know why I'm still doing it because it's never worked. I said, look, here's my $12,500 program. It's my Rolls-Royce program. Jump on in. I'll work with you. I'm not going to charge you because you're one of my best friends. And they go, wow, it's amazing. I'm just going to love this thing. And they never do it.
Yep.
Never, ever. In probably a dozen occasions when I've done that, has someone actually implemented. So I'm doing people a grave disservice. In fact, if I get to the point where I give certain things away for free, because they're not going to do it.
Yeah, people have to have some skin in the game, and that makes them actually show up. I think that's definitely true.
Yeah.
Tom, I wanted to now kind of shift to, you have kind of a model, and you refer to the 10-step model for lead generation. Is it really that simple?
No, because with each step there are some subtleties.
Right.
But nevertheless, it's still a solid framework.
Yeah, I was half joking when I said that because a lot of people want a 2-step or a 3-step, but
right.
Generally speaking, kind of what is kind of the flow through the steps on starting to generate leads? Where do people need to get started?
Well, a very good place to start is what we talked about initially, which is the marketing message and trying to figure out, it's one of the strategic foundations. What is it people have to see or hear in order to want to know more? Because unless we've got that right, unless we know it gets cut through, and we just know it motivates people to register for events, attend events, buy a book, whatever it happens to be, take our survey, our diagnostic, any one of the many ways that we can have people engage with our brand to have the opportunity to build the rapport, respect, relatability, and reciprocity. And if we know what that thing is they need to see or hear, then nothing else is going to work. So that's a very good place to start. And I can give folks a 4-step process for that right now if we've got like 2 minutes for it. Yeah,
sure. I'd love to hear that.
Okay. So the first thing is you sit in your common sense corner and you mentally create an intention to erase everything you think you know. And you simply ask yourself, okay, with all the experience I have in my marketplace, and I think about the best clients I had, what were their primary frustrations and disappointments in dealing with people like me in the past? So that's pretty simple. For me, most people who offer marketing services or training, unfortunately, people purchase it and they find out it doesn't actually work. So we need to speak to that elephant in the room.
Yep.
And, for me, the way I speak to that elephant in the room, is I say, well, don't trust me. And people say, what do you mean? If I'm going to work with you, I have to trust you, right? I said, well, let me ask you this. Have you worked with people in the past who said, trust me, give me your money and I'll give you the grill oil? And you've been burned. I said, yeah, that's happened a lot. I said, well, that's not working for you, so let's switch it up. I'll trust you. So I'll work with you for a month personally. I won't delegate this. I will meet with you personally for a month, and I don't want you to pay me a cent. Let me prove to you that what I've got is special, and it's exceptional, that it's brilliant, and that it's one of the very best business decisions you've ever made. Now, if you think it is after that month, I would like to be paid for that month very much. So thank you very much. So that's just an example of what is the elephant in the room when someone listening to this, when you're speaking to a prospective client, what is it that they're not saying? But it's what the Germans call the Hintergedanke, the thought at the back, the behind thought. Gee, if I hand my running money over to Tom, is it going to be like the other experiences I've had? Now, they may not say that to you explicitly because they might be very kind people and they don't want to offend you, but that elephant in the room has got to be spoken to. So step one, you sit in your common sense corner and you figure out what is it that people would need to hear or see in order to be able to trust me and to be motivated to go to another step. And step two is you create a set of 3 statements that are highly differentiated. So as you know, my marketing messages create a weekly flow of high-quality inbound new client inquiries. That's what I think people need to hear or see in order to get cut through and want to know more about that thing. Step 3 is once you've created those 3 distinct variations of the same message, you then find 10 people who are either past, present, or potential future clients, and you ask them to rate those 3 messages, to pick one that would most motivate them to want to know more. And you'll find almost invariably, provided you have the messages are distinctively different, that at least 6 out of the 10 will choose exactly the same message. And that's your winner. That's your new marketing message. People call it a USP or an elevator pitch, but that's your new marketing message. And it's got to be benefit rich, and it should contain specifics, and it should be highly differentiated. So once you've done that, and I can give you another before and after example if you like, but once you've done that, so the first step was sit in your common sense corner. The second step was come up with 3 variations. The third test is ask 10 past, present, or future ideal clients, not your friends, not your colleagues, but clients, which, by the way, can be a very good marketing exercise on its own. Which one of the following 3 statements would most motivate you to want to know more? The fourth step is to use it and see what happens to your bank account.
So a lot of people like that 4th step, I assume.
If it works.
Earlier on, you talked about you drive your clients to have 8 differentiators versus other people. Is that right?
Correct.
And this is part of this process at the outset as well.
That's exactly right. Part of the strategic part of it. Yep.
So it's kind of it's part of what nowadays I think people would call the blue ocean strategy, or finding ways to set yourself apart from everyone else in the market.
I guess so.
And what are some examples of things that, just to give some people ideas of the kinds of things that
Sure. Okay. Well, for example, my entry-level program is $2,000. And people can pay $197 a month, and they don't even have to pay for the first month. So that sets me apart straight off the bat. And it speaks to that. It speaks to that risk that people have felt in the past when they've lost some money paying money to people that they thought was trustworthy but couldn't deliver the results. Well, let's take another one. At a $197 a month price point, every single one of those clients gets my personal mobile phone number. Now, it's easy for me to say, I care about helping you, and we're going to look after you, and we've got great support. But when I say to people, I want you to have my personal mobile phone number because I want you to know that I do care, and I'm probably the only guy on the planet that has a $197 a month program that you're going to get their mobile phone from. And also, I commit to meet with you once a week, personally, live. I'm not going to delegate that to a licensee, a franchisee, an employee, or a contractor. So these are very real and specific examples of why I'm different. And they're inarguable. I can say we've got great quality, but everyone can say that. And a lot of people do say that. I can say to people, we'll get money into bank account. Lots of people say that. But I'm then a guy that says, look, give me a month and I'll work with you essentially for free if you don't think it's actually going to work. So these are clear and specific differentiators. And I really beat my clients up about this because differentiation is what the world is lacking. And I can tell you, for example, another example, a software developer who Max put software into quick service restaurants like McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, etc. And so he didn't have any significant differentiators other than he said, my stuff's really good. It works really well. And so what we did is we created a marketing message. Instead of saying when on his website or a LinkedIn profile, a business card, or someone asked him at a dinner party, what is it you do, Max? And he'd say, well, we create point of sale software for quick service restaurants. Okay, eyes glaze over, walk away. But when the owner of a McDonald's restaurant or even 5 Burger Kings or whatever said to Max, well, what do you do? And he said, we increase the sales of quick service restaurants by 25% in 90 days. Oh, and we can guarantee that.
Yeah.
Then we get cut through. And the guarantee is the differentiator, because lots of people are saying our software will increase your sales, but no one is saying we'll do that by more than 25%. We'll do it in under 90 days or you don't pay.
That's definitely a good differentiator. Now, I do want to ask you generally, so once you figure out the message, that's when you start to move towards tactics and away from strategy?
Yes. Once you've got, there's 8 strategic questions we work through, but once we've signed off on that, that's when we start to develop the marketing assets. And, before we talked about building rapport, respect, reciprocity, and relatability. What that infers, because we're not going to think we're the commercial equivalent of Hugh Jackman and people are just going to fall over to buy from us, what that infers is that we need time. And it's one of the filters is we ask people who we think might be ideal clients to spend time with us. The people who don't want to spend time with us, it's either because 3 things. They just don't feel a need for what we've got. In other words, we've got it in front of the wrong person, or we don't have an effective marketing message, or we haven't removed the risks. One of those 3 things. If anyone's marketing is not working, one of those 3 things is fault. We've got our message in front of the wrong person, or it's the wrong message, or we haven't removed the risks in their mind. But assuming we've done that, then we want to get them to an experience. We want them to get them to read your book or download your guide and read it, view the short videos you have. And this creation of these marketing assets is very often, as we talked about before, the missing step. It's this opportunity to have an ideal client spend some time with us so we can establish the rapport, respect, relatability, and reciprocity. Webinars are great. Lunch and learns are great. Any sort of online video conferencing, I call them boardroom meetings, perhaps briefings, perhaps a small intimate gathering of 6 people, webcams on. And you're going to show them, in my case, I show them how lead gen works. In Thomas's case, he's a merger and acquisition client in Bonn, Germany. He's going to show them how good M&A works. For Andy, a client of mine in Madrid, Spain, he's going to show them how Google Ads works. For Frank in Philadelphia, who's a big data software specialist, he's going to show them how to create amazing opportunities for your clients within your business through big data. So it's an hour, but it's an hour where we walk through, and I think you alluded to it, the 10 steps, the persuasion sequence, and it starts with things like, why should you listen to me? Great question. Establish credibility. What is the promise here? My promise is the weekly flow of new clients. What transformations does that take? Let's go on to, well, what's the problem we're solving? What are the symptoms? So what are you feeling if you haven't solved this problem? What's going to be happening right now in your life or your business? And so there's 10 of those steps, and we're walking people through this, I call it persuasion sequence. And as we go through that, we're taking away all the obstacles in their mind between them and working with you. And we're doing it in an added value way, so that the people who don't buy still think well of your brand. And the people who are interested and are ready, then they're going to book a time to talk with you. Or if you're selling products online, they're going to go online and they're going to go ahead and buy, because we've done a great job of that persuasion sequence.
I think that's a great way to sum it up. Now, we've been talking for a long time now, so Tom, I want to wrap up pretty quickly, but I did want to ask you before I asked you a little bit more about where people can find you. I wanted to ask you a question I like to ask all my guests, and that's, what can my listeners do, say, in 5 minutes a day in kind of building a practice, or maybe get done by the end of the week, that they could do to really improve their lead generation? What is something that, if you had to tell them, here's one thing I want you to do, what would it be?
Well, there's nothing I could suggest that would do it in 5 minutes, but if they are prepared to invest 10 minutes, I could help them.
Okay.
They would go to www.5hourchallenge.com. If they go there, and it's completely free, and they're willing to have a look at the videos that I put together, 1 video a day over 5 days, each training session is only 10 minutes long. So they can view that video that's just only 10 minutes long each day for over 5 days. And if they commit another 50 minutes, so it's 1 hour a day over 5 days now, then they should be able to generate 5 highly qualified fresh leads. And the objective is 1 new fee-paying client.
That's a heck of an offer. So I hope listeners will take you up on that. So other than that, though, my listeners should definitely take you up on that. But if they want to find you somewhere else, where can they go about finding more information about you or learning your services or
right.
whatever?
Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, they can go to bookachatwithtom.com. If they're ready to rock and roll, they can go there and have a read of the page and see if they think that they have a fit. Bookachatwithtom.com, and we can talk. Other than that, hop over to leadsology.guru, LEADSOLOGY, leadsology.guru. There's a bunch of free stuff in there. There's webinar replays, there's downloadable guides, I even give away a free book on there. So, and I mean, it's a real book, it's like 53,000 words long. So there's a whole bunch of resources they can dive into there. And I think that will help people quite a lot.
We'll definitely have links to all that in the show notes. Tom, I want to thank you for coming on and for giving such great advice to my listeners. It has been a pleasure.
Well, thanks so much for being such a great interviewer and putting my feet to the fire on a couple of occasions. It's fun.
Okay, well, that's it for now. Listeners, stay tuned for my quick legal lesson after the break.
And now for today's legal lesson.
Yay! Hey there. Tom had some really great advice that I think we can all employ in our businesses to try to generate more leads. I'm going to take some of what he said and I'm going to try to apply it, and I hope you'll do the same. And in today's legal lesson, I want to address an issue that isn't specific to generating leads. It's also relevant to sales and other things like that. But I felt this was a good place to talk about it. And that is to give a general overview of the requirements that the United States Federal Trade Commission puts on us as marketers. Now, I'm not going to go into details. I'm not going to talk about all the little details about things. They have rules about affiliate marketing. They have rules about all of these different things. But I'm going to talk instead about the core concept that the Federal Trade Commission employs and how that relates to generating leads and other parts of your business. At a core level, the Federal Trade Commission is essentially wants you to employ a test that is you are being transparent with people who you are marketing to. And by being transparent, the idea is you give them the information so that they can make the necessary decisions. So there are a couple of different parts to that. The first part of your Federal Trade Commission kind of meeting the standards they employ is things like affiliate marketing and anything with reviews where you're getting products at discounts or anything like that. And the point of all of that is you need to disclose to people any kind of financial incentive that you have in marketing some other product. So if you think about it in the classic affiliate marketing situation, people who you're marketing to need to understand, hey, if you buy this product that I'm promoting, I'm going to get something from it. And the reason for that is that people that you're promoting to should know that you have a financial interest in talking about this product, because that way they understand that you're doing it and that you have a financial incentive. It just makes sense. If you didn't have a financial incentive and you were promoting something, that would maybe have different weight for them. Now, if you have a good rapport with your audience, if you have built the relationship that's necessary, you don't have to worry about it because you can disclose to people. And quite honestly, they have no problem with you getting something out of it. They like you and they believe you're giving them good information. I'll be honest with you. I have people come to me all the time asking me if I have an affiliate link for X, Y, and Z product that I talk about, because they believe that what I'm saying, and they're saying, hey, if you do have an affiliate link, I'd like to make sure that you get some financial incentive out of this. So it shouldn't be a problem there. And I also mentioned reviews. Reviews are something similar. If you're getting a discount on a product, or if you're getting a product for free, you should disclose that in any review you do of it. The reason, again, the point is that people should know that you maybe got this product and didn't have to pay for it. And that could affect your judgment in some way. So that's kind of the transparency piece of making sure that people know what your motives are for promoting a product. Now, the other part of the FTC rules that you really need to understand is when you start making something that approaches a claim. And this could bring up other regulations by other entities, but it's mainly an FTC issue. And this is when you're thinking about things like, testimonials or case studies or anything like that. Or let's say you wanted to say, get 10,000 Twitter followers in X number of days. Well, anytime you're making a claim like that or providing results that other people that you've worked with have gotten, you need to disclose to people the extent of your case study. So for example, if you disclose a case study, and let's say you've worked with 50 people and only one person has gotten 10,000 Twitter followers in whatever it is, 10 days, 100 days, whatever you're saying, people should know that these results aren't typical. And so it's kind of the classic results aren't typical. But you need to go a bit further than that. You need to tell them that, number one, the testimonial is accurate. The results that you got, that this person got, are in fact accurate. These are their actual results, but that these are not the typical results that your clients get, and that others have had different results, and that the results will depend on 18 different things, including the effort you put in, et cetera, and all of those kinds of things. Now, you're going to have that generally in your disclaimer that you would have on your website telling people this, but the point is you need them to understand that it's not some guarantee. You're not saying, hey, by doing this, I'm guaranteeing you these results. So you need to be careful about that. Now, one other issue that I want to mention that could come up so that you understand it is you can't claim that something is buy one, get one free or something like that, or that it's, I'm giving you 50% off right now if it's always discounted at that rate. There was a classic example. If you watch TV, you'll probably recognize this, the My Pillow guy who is marketing these pillows that are supposed to be fantastic. I've never had one. I don't know if they're any good. But he did these infomercials and he did commercials. And for years, every single one of these had a buy one, get one free offer. Okay, so literally every single one of his episodes, everything you did. So anytime you called, anytime you did it, and again, I don't know what the price is, but let's say he was charging $50, but you buy one, you get one free. In reality, the price was $25. And so the FTC went after him and forced him to change things because the people watching his advertising, watching his marketing had a right to know that this wasn't actually some special limited time offer. Now, I bring that up because that definitely does apply to online entrepreneurs, right? Because we're going to do bonuses, we're going to do fast action bonuses, we're going to do discounts, we're going to do things like that. Now, as long as they're not available all the time, not a problem. But if you try to use some false scarcity and people actually could get that same promotion or whatever it is anytime, then it's not allowed. Now, if you have a first day bonus and you're running a webinar, let's say, once a month or every couple of weeks, and the only time they can get that is the day of the webinar, if they're on that webinar, that's not a problem because you're talking to people on the webinar you're saying, hey, if you sign up today, you're going to get this. And same things. If you have an evergreen funnel and you use something like deadline funnel, where you can actually track people and they're only going to be able to get these bonuses in a certain period of time. After that, the bonuses go away. Not a problem. The problem would come up if you're doing some sort of false scarcity and people actually could get the discounts anytime they wanted to. You can't do that. So those are kind of the big issues. But the way to think about complying with the FTC, so we talked about you need to disclose your financial incentives. You need to disclose, something more about your testimonials that they're not typical. And then you can't be using false scarcity or false promotions and giving people the wrong impression about when they can get discounts. But if you look at all of these, there's a common thread. And the common thread is that you need some level of transparency. People have the right to know a bit about and have some general understanding of what your pricing policy is, what your results are, etc., and what your incentives are. So what I like to tell people is think about it this way. If anything you're doing might seem a little bit underhanded, or it might seem like you're hiding something from your potential buyers or potential leads, then you have a problem. So what you need to do is be transparent and make sure that people understand these things. Don't make claims that you can't substantiate. Don't have these false scarcity tactics. If you want to use scarcity, make sure it's real. But apply that general rule across the board and you'll be good. So that's the lesson for today. Be transparent in what you do, and you should not have a problem with the Federal Trade Commission. Now, again, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I hope you'll click on the button to subscribe. That way you make sure that you get every one of these episodes when they come out and you get the great content. Also, if you're interested, I'm now running a bi-weekly webinar. So it's every other week where I talk about how to protect your online business without paying thousands to a lawyer. So I run that every week. You can register for that by going to members.youronlinegenius.com/webinar. That'll take you to the current one that you can sign up for. You go there, you'll get all signed up, you'll get the emails, you get access to the training, and then if you can't make it live, you get the replay, etc. So again, that's members.youronlinegenius.com/webinar. That's it for this week. I'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks for listening. And remember to visit mistakes.youronlinegenius.com to get your essential guide to the 4 legal mistakes that can doom your business and how to avoid them. Join us next week for another episode to expand your online genius and your success.